But with this crucial difference, in the 20th century, Catholic political figures, including presidential candidates Al Smith and John F. Kennedy, were suspected of harboring a secret loyalty to the Pope. Barrett's Catholicism, per se, shouldn't be an impediment to her nomination or confirmation. Anthony Kennedy, the justice she would replace, is a Catholic, as are 4 other incumbents, including the Chief Justice, John Roberts. But People of Praise is a lay group, outside the church hierarchy, formed at a remarkable moment in American religious history in the late 1960s and early 1970s. It was at the vanguard of a cultural and religious phenomenon that ultimately became known as the Jesus Movement and was featured on the cover of Time and Life. Many Christians view this time as a bona fide revival, a unique manifestation of God's power similar to the Great Awakenings of the 18th and 19th centuries. This context, the intensity and earnestness of that time, helps explain some of the more esoteric and sometimes concerning elements of religious practice that have been attributed to People of Praise. The group's public reticence has contributed to accusations by former members that it attempts to influence the lives of its members in ways that in the past have crossed over into control and manipulation. Even in one of the most rigorous critiques of Barrett's group, a 152-page booklet written in 1997 by a former member named Adrian Reimers, there are numerous references to the powerful experience that swept up so many young people of faith during that time. Reimers notes the strong sense of euphoria that permeated the movement, not only in South Bend, but all across the country. It seemed that the Holy Spirit was carrying us along, that all we had to do was to respond to his manifest leadings, Reimers wrote of that time. And Reimers describes charismatic masses, prayer meetings, and large rallies in which participants felt an almost tangible sense of communion. Standing in a large arena full of fellow Christians singing and praising God in unison, it is easy to imagine that Christ himself is there embracing all and ready to welcome them into his kingdom, Reimers wrote. What is striking about People of Praise is that unlike many charismatic Christian groups of the time, its members tended to be highly educated. It is a mistake to see these groups as populated with dysfunctional misfits looking for sure answers to uncertain times and a firm guiding hand through a perilous world, Reimers wrote. Rather, they are usually highly motivated and idealistic, wanting for themselves a deeper life of faith and also an opportunity to serve Christ and the gospel more completely. Covenant community, with its demands, offered a chance for Christian heroism, he wrote. But Reimers also shows what he considers a darker side to People of Praise, a controlling and unhealthy environment for people who committed themselves to the community. All members were assigned a head to advise them, and because the group believed itself to be divinely inspired and directed, this structure of personal oversight often became oppressive and intrusive. This was most clear in the way that wives were told to submit to their husbands. This teaching, that the husband is spiritual head or pastor to his wife, is one of the most firmly held and foundational teachings in that community, Reimers wrote. The wife, as a good member of the community, has a prima facie obligation to obey her husband as the bearer of God's will. In practice, this means that the two do not cannot relate as equals. His will reveals God's to her, whereas her will is merely human. The two cannot meet as equals, because the husband always has divine authority on his side. Despite insinuations by Barrett's opponents, it's unclear what impact her membership in People of Praise would have on her jurisprudence. There have been intimations that because members of the group have depended so heavily on the counsel of their assigned head in the past, Barrett's decisions in key cases would lack independence. But during her hearings, Garnett said many Democratic senators relied on activist groups' willful misrepresentations of a nominee's 20-year-old, co-authored, law review article as the basis for repeated charges regarding the nominee's views. Similarly, John Inazu, a professor of law and religion at Washington University in St. Louis, argued that the original New York Times story from the fall of 2017 exaggerated the importance of a promise that People of Praise members make to devote themselves to the community. Such oath-taking is common across a variety of religious traditions, Inazu wrote. Pledging oneself to a religious community, Inazu said, is something that builds on long-standing practices of fidelity and accountability present in all of the great wisdom traditions. At their best, these practices guide adherents toward honesty, humility, and charity. Yet many questions do remain unanswered about Barrett's role in the group. She said on her Senate questionnaire for confirmation to the Seventh Circuit that she was a trustee of a Trinity school. And there were photos of Barrett in the magazine, Vine and Branches, published by People of Praise. But the link to those issues of the magazine were removed from the internet and are no longer available, the New York Times reported last fall. It is not even clear how long Barrett has been affiliated with the group. I've spent a lot of time with interviews over the past several days and I'm going quiet now to get some work done, said Lent, who is a physics professor at Notre Dame. He added that the critiques leveled by Reimers came from someone who said he left the group in 1984. Lent has not said much publicly about the degree to which People of Praise has changed or evolved since its early days. He told the Chicago Tribune that the group is big on personal freedom. Obey your conscience. The only person you can control is yourself, he said. And Lent told the National Catholic Reporter that the religious community is always growing up in the Lord.